Hello. Well, actually, my first question is, I think it's both of us. I feel like you're more brilliant than ever, but I must be more brilliantly receiving you than ever before. I mean it. I mean, it's just amazing today.
You know, it works together. Because
yeah.
You're exactly right. If you're not in the receptive mode where we are, you can't really hear it the way we mean it. But if you weren't in the receptive mode that you are, we would not be broadcasting in the way that we are. So that's why we call it co-creation at its best.
That's cool, yeah.
Yes.
A couple of times I was going to say, like, wow, the sound system was really good in here, but it's, thank you, Jared, but I mean, it's just so clear. So thank you, I'm loving it. So just another thing, you talked about the vortex and the bubbles are outside when I was out there, so it was really cool. So now I think of my vortex as Lawrence Welk for some reason. So, I like it. So I had a question about some contrast that I recently experienced, and I think I got the answer, but I would just love to just chew it quickly because it was really important. I think the answer was the statement, allowing others their experience allows me mine.
Before you go into the details of this contrast, we want to just lay one basis down, and that is the statement that we made for the first time really recently, and much of the group was ready to hear it when we offered it, and you are too, and it's a next logical step in your understanding of how all of this works, so we want to emphasize it again here. Your inner being is always calling you from wherever you are. The way your life works out, like maybe moving through some contrast, is about your receptive mode. The clarity and the purity of your source calling you is always the case. But where you are determines how you hear it. That's why the discussion that we just had just now is so important to this one too. So therefore, wouldn't it be prudent to stop beating up on yourself about any contrast that you might be moving through, and instead just say, thank you, contrast, for bringing me more clarity. Thank you, inner being, for not caring what kind of contrast I'm in, and thank me for moving through it all. The degree of happiness in your life, therefore the success that you will be experiencing in creating your own reality, is completely measured by the amount of joy that you have. And so if you can just put joy first, clarity first, happy first, love first, appreciation first, and just always be leaning in those directions as much as you can, then contrast takes on a whole other look to you. First of all, it doesn't seem terrible. It never does. You always take it as clarifying and therefore beneficial. Every motion forward that has ever been experienced by any consciousness, which is all of us, has been because of some amount of contrast that has caused it. And so we just want to get that in there as you begin.
Oh no, that sounds like step 5. I'm very happy that I figured that out, because it's been a quest for me to focus on me, even when I'm interacting with others. Like, let them have their shit. So
got no choice.
Yeah. So I'll be brief then, just to see if there's some.
So the less you care about their reaction to your reaction, the faster you are back into the joy that is natural to you.
Well, that was the old half of this. So thank you for saying that. It was a lot, but my previous allowing others their experience was how they were reacting to me. This was like one level deeper. I brought someone to the doctors, being helpful. That felt good. Then I was going to leave them there, and I was leaving, and I got this instinct, go back in. I went in, I ended up going into the whole doctor machinery with them. And they had a test, and of course it was a negative, not a great thing. So then I went deeper into, now the doctor came and pronounced the drugs that they were going to have to take, and they weren't happy. And so I found myself trying to soothe that whole thing and wanting to say, like, no, you don't have to take them forever. It's just because you're stressed right now because of blah, 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 that I know that's going on in their life. So I was very clear about what their experience was, but I realized later that I was really shaken up by it. I was working with a client that always puts me in the vortex. I came out of that and I was really shaking, and I realized, I think what I did was took on, like I was hoping that I could get my understanding of the experience through to them, and I can't do that with people.
So we have some questions for you. Do you accept that there was something going on within you that you didn't even know was going on within you?
Sure.
And do you accept that this impulse to go back in with them was not a wrong impulse, but a really good impulse, because it ferreted out something that you didn't even know was there?
I totally did.
And do you acknowledge that knowing that it was there was the first step in putting more clarifying desire into your vortex? And so where are you now with it? So immediately after, you were not as stable as you usually are, but did you move through it all?
Definitely.
But now you're questioning it because, and we really want to hear, why are you questioning? Because you said, I started to leave, and then I got a thought to go back in.
Yeah.
So immediately after, you thought that was a wrong impulse and that you shouldn't have gone back in. In fact, you regretted going back in because it set some ripples of more contrast in motion.
Right.
But now, a little further down the road, do you regret going back in?
No.
And what's the understanding that's different now?
Two parts. One, three. I was aware that it threw me.
I became aware that I had resistance
Right.
that I didn't know was there before.
And I was aware my guidance system was working. I was like, this shook you up. Like, I didn't ignore it.
But you see, this is the thing that we so want you to hear. Your guidance system was working when it called you into the
sure.
contrast.
Yep.
Ooh, just like it's working when it called you through the contrast, and just like it's working when it calls you all the way out of the contrast. Your guidance system is working when you understand your guidance system.
Right.
If you're oblivious to it, if you don't know what emotions are, then you're like a cork bobbing around on a raging sea, and there's no rhyme or reason to what's going on. You can't make sense of it. But knowing what you know,
Right.
so isn't the answer, as soon as you do get your footing, tell the story in the way that soothes you?
Yes.
And the message that we really want to hit hard here in a very clarifying way is never, ever, ever second guess your decision to do something, because regret is the most wasted emotion of all. If I just hadn't gone back in, then I wouldn't have had to go in there, and then I wouldn't have had to encounter the doctor, and then I wouldn't have had to do that, and then I wouldn't have had to feel all of that. And we say, yeah, but so what? You're still standing, and you're standing in a better place. You're standing in a place of greater clarification you've been looking for.
Yes.
And that was the path of least resistance to get you to the clarification that you were looking for and found.
I agree.
Yeah.
Great.
Don't you love knowing how good it all is?
Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah. Thank
Enough?
you. Yeah, that
Really
was great.
good.
Awesome.
Really good.
Yeah, thank you.
Really good.
Hello. I have a question I want to ask you about music and emotions and vibrations. A few years ago, I went on this awesome journey with one of my best friends. And before I was familiar with your work and your words, there was a sense that we created our realities. We would tell each other stories and they'd happen. We were hitchhiking. It was wild.
You're free and open.
Yeah.
Free feeling and
Yes.
open to the universe's answer to your vortex,
Yeah.
even though you didn't know anything about any of that.
And that friend actually introduced me to Abraham, to you. On that journey, I had this powerful desire manifest for music, to create music. And after that experience, I started hearing music and feeling music in a way that I had never felt before. In my 20 years prior, I would listen to music and I thought, so my question is, what happened, or what was that change in me that made me feel like I was hearing these sounds that I had heard all my life for the first time?
Because for the first time you heard music through the ears of source. We haven't talked about this today with emphasis as we sometimes have, but this is a good point to remind you of this. Everyone who has ever experienced the deliciousness of being inside music, who has reemerged into non-physical, is still focused with you all in the musical moments of your life experience. So part of the glorious benefit and the reason for so much joy of being in the receiving mode is that you receive the vantage point of those who are focused purely on music. And so you got into that place where you could feel what they were feeling, and more important, hear what they were hearing. One time, many years ago, Esther had an experience where she could hear music in her mind, unlike anything that she'd ever heard. And she commented to Jerry, it lasted for about an hour. And she commented to Jerry that she so wished that she could just plug a cord into her ear or into something, some port, that would record it onto a device where she could then really hear it with her ears. But that's the translation process that's going on with you. You are receiving that understanding, that joy of music and rhythm and beat and prose too. And here it comes.
Wow. I have another question.
Yeah.
About gender. And ever since I was young, I didn't really identify as a boy or a girl, and I loved playing with lots of different things, and I was kind of weird to like the people around me, and
well, you're weird relative to the music too. And part of being tapped into that source energy, that's not uncommon, because source is about vibration and about the beginnings of those vibrations, and those other things are inspired otherwise. So when you tap back into the pureness of source, very often there is not a gender distinction, because there's a vibrational basis in all.
I recently, you've been saying it this whole time, vibrational being, and it just occurred to me, I was thinking about human beings, and I was like, oh, that's what Abraham means, is that I look around and I see humans, but you're saying it's vibration.
And in time, you will not see Republicans or Democrats either. In other words, those distinctions that block you off from the whole of that which you are become less and less significant all the time. We think this is a really good time for a segment of refreshment.
Thank you.